Great. So if you've got any question, please use the chat bot to send in your question, and I will read the question out, and then we can take it up from there. While we're waiting for the questions.
Except that we don't have to work.
Except the what?
It was like 11 or something. Yeah, it's so nice and can't go out.
Say that again.
I think it's just random chatter.
Oh, okay. Okay. While we're waiting for the questions, I don't know, Daria, do you want to just tell the audience just a little about yourself, the work that you've been doing, and what you plan to do, and all of that?
Of course. So I'm the creator of ScrumMaster.com. I recently became a trainer with Scrum.org. So obviously I am providing the training. But before that, I was working as a Scrum Master in different organizations. And I really enjoy the Scrum Master role. And that's why I wanted to help others also understand this role better and start enjoying it and bringing change to organizations and helping teams be successful. So that's why I went to become a trainer. And as we know, the current situation kind of changed a lot of how we approach things. And I guess it made the need for agility and for responding to change more necessary in the current conditions, and it comes the same for training, especially training as an industry in general, because you can no longer provide the in-person trainings really right now, and we don't know for how long. We are responding to change and trying to adapt to the current situation by going virtual, right? Doing sessions like this, Ask Me Anything, providing webinars, just creating more social interactivity with people, even though we need to be distancing from each other. So yeah.
All right. Thank you so very much. So let's hear a few words from Emal. Emal, take it away.
For the last 15, over 15 years now, and for the last 5 years or so, I've been working on building out a curriculum, a full curriculum for the way that I want business analysis to be taught. And I really just kind of based it on, so when I started getting professional business back in 2005, trouble that I found was that there was a lot of training material that's out there, but a lot of that training material was very, it was by the book, and a lot of times I would do some sort of training and then I'd get into the real world and I would see a huge disparity between what's being taught and how things are actually done in real life. And so for the last 5 years, I've been building out a curriculum for a program that teaches this in a way that I wish was available to me back in 2005 when I started. And so 5 years ago, I started working on this, but for those 5 years, I kept on doing, I'm a business analyst consultant, so I've been continuing to just do client work as I've been building the materials. I just finished my last client engagement back in December, and since then I've been just kind of going full force in producing the training materials for the program that I've been wanting to build. So that's what's been going on. And what I'd like to say on top of all of this is that I'm glad to have everybody here online, because I've been trying to encourage everybody to try to do exercise and social distancing and make sure that you're kind of isolating yourself. And as part of that, I'm trying to give people ways of doing things online, just like Bola is, just like Daria is. Trying to give people ways of doing things online that's going to keep them secluded for the time being until the situation gets better.
Cool. Sounds good.
So, if you have any questions, I think talk really about the profession and just for the three of us to have a conversation until a question pops up. Because from a lot of the members that have joined our community, there are some questions that pop up regularly for beginners.
Mal's audio got off, I think.
Yeah, I think we have a lot of issue with your audio, Emal. But someone just sent me a question, and I'm going to allow Daria to take this question. The person says, "Can you advise me on the Scrum certification that I should take, and maybe why?" So, um, Daria, you're a trainer. You've worked as a Scrum Master. You've worked in, you've spoken at several events. You're doing a lot of things within the Scrum and the Agile community. Uh, Let me see how you respond to this.
What certifications do you get to get, right?
Yes.
Well, as the best answer a coach can always give is it depends. I'll start with that. It depends what you're trying to achieve. Is it about the certification itself? Are you trying to get a job, for example? In this case, I think right now any certification would be good. So the main two that are widely recognized is the Certified Scrum Master offered by Scrum Alliance. Can we mute people because I can hear
Right,
everyone?
I'm going to mute every other person. Okay.
Okay. So, and as well as Professional Scrum Master by Scrum.org. Obviously, I am a trainer for Scrum.org. I would always highly recommend the Scrum.org certification. Now, it depends on how you want to go about it. There are different ways to get the certification themselves.
No?
I'm sorry, I can't, because I can
Guys,
hear
if
others.
you're not talking, can you sort of mute your mic so you don't distract other people? So I've muted everyone.
There's still a couple of people who are not on mute. Okay, thank you. Now, if you go for a Professional Scrum Master certification, you can actually just go and do it online. You don't need to go to a class. However, if you want to learn, let's say you're really, really new to this, and you want to learn what the role is about, you want to learn more about Scrum, then go to a class, right? Go to a Professional Scrum Master class to really understand how you can be successful in this role, right? The certification itself is good if you just want to, I guess, improve your resume, like how it looks. It's not, the certification in itself is not going to help you understand your role. It just means that you are really good at passing tests, you know.
Right.
So
Absolutely.
that's kind of the gist of it. Don't go for things that are not Scrum Alliance or Scrum.org though. There are a lot of things out there that you can get a certification for like 35 bucks. Don't waste your money.
Yeah.
Right.
Can I add something, Bola?
Oh, please do. Please do.
So the one thing I would add is if you're just thinking about the certification strategy for your career, I think that what I like to advise people to do is to kind of step back and understand. And I think, Daria, you were speaking to this as well just a second ago. Step back and try to understand what it is that you're trying to get out of the certification, because there are certain things that certification will do for you, and then there are certain things that certifications will not do for you. So let me just kind of list off my experience with certification processes, just so everybody gets an overview of whether they want to invest in a certification or not. My view of certifications is that certifications are needed to give you a little bit more credibility in the eyes of employers. So when an employer is looking at a group of people that they want to hire, the certification can help you stand out a little bit more than somebody else. What you should try to, when you're trying to decide whether you should get certified in something or not, decide whether the time investment and the effort you're putting into certification is worth the payoff. Because a lot of people, especially in business analysis world, a lot of people will try to go and get the CBAP certification, for example, expecting that it's going to teach them exactly how to do business analysis. And that's not what the certification is going to teach you to do. What it does is it confirms to the employer that you understand the basic concepts that are in the BA box, It explains that you're familiar with the language and with the world of business analysis, but it does not teach you how to perform the work. So think very carefully about your certification strategy as part of your career. What I would say is that for a lot of business analysts, what I normally suggest for them to do is to possibly invest more time in learning. If they want to get certified, invest time in learning a different domain. So for example, if you're interested in working as an analyst or as a project team member in the finance domain, it might be more worthwhile for you to go out and get certified as an accountant or as somebody who does financial risk management than to actually get a business analysis certification right off the bat. You can work on the BA certification later on. So those are just some thoughts that people should be giving just when they're thinking about certifications in general.
Okay, cool, thank you. I got another question from someone who is, I'm going to paraphrase this. So you're working as a Scrum Master and a project manager or a program manager walks up to you and says, why are you late on this feature? How do you deal with that? How do you deal with that program manager, project manager? How do you respond to that project manager, program manager?
Who is it for? Anyone?
We can both answer. You can go ahead, Daria, and then I'll give an answer as well.
That's normal, right? I'm looking at the chat, right? I say,
oh,
I see,
right.
have you
Absolutely.
had any run-ins with project managers? What do you say to them? Now, in Scrum, if we're working in a Scrum team, there are only 3 roles, right? Scrum Master, Product Owner, and the development team. Who is then the project manager in the situation? Who is the program manager? Well, they are your stakeholders. And I'm really sorry, my cat decided to come and talk to me right now. The reality is they need those answers. They also have reporting to do. They are concerned. Now, as a Scrum Master, there's 2 things you need to do. First of all, if you have a product owner, think about how is this product owner working with the stakeholders, right? Are they building the right relationships with the stakeholders to make sure that stakeholders know where you're at, that they maybe have their questions answered, concerns resolved? As a Scrum Master, you might now talk to them and try to understand what are they worried about. Is it about the fact that they are late? Are they surprised? Maybe they're waiting on a certain feature, right? And you can work with them and figure out how you can help them, right? It's more about building relationships with your stakeholders and making sure your product owner is involved and working with them, you know?
So I'll speak from a traditional waterfall perspective. So the relationship between a business analyst and a project manager is a complicated one. And what I always advise business analysts to do is to try to always get ahead of, if they're going to be late on something, try to get ahead of that before you're asked that question, okay? So when you're first starting off the project, typically that's where you start to put in the majority of your work, because the relationship, a project manager, their goal is to make sure they deliver the most that they can in the least amount of time. And so what they tend to do is they'll tend to squeeze timelines as much as possible until somebody provides some pushback. And we are not judgmental about them. That's just the nature of their work, and that's just the way that projects execute. As an analyst, what you have to do is at the time when the project is being planned out, you have to make sure that you have put up enough of, you've made a good enough case to get the time that you actually need to do the work. So right up front, you have to make sure that you're prepared to give some estimates. And when you're challenged on those estimates, you have to provide real justification for why you need this much time instead of this much time. And if the project manager still says, no, you only have this much time, then you have other strategies in your tool belt to deal with that situation. One of which is that if they reduce your timelines, well, what you do is you start to sacrifice a little bit of scope and possibly a little bit of quality, because there's certain things have to give. So when you're executing on a project, the project manager, and when I work on projects, my expectation always is that when I'm working with a project manager, is that they're going to give me the least amount of time possible to do my work. And my job is not to ask for the most amount of time, but to ask for the most reasonable amount of time to do that. So right up at project planning, I know that I'm already up against a little bit of resistance to get what it is that I need. Now, when I'm actually in the project and inevitably you run into situations where you didn't see certain things coming and you're gonna be late. The first thing that you have to do is that you have to, as soon as you know that that's going to happen, you have to raise that as an issue and say, look, for reasons A, B, and C, chances are that we plan to get this done by middle of next week. It's probably gonna take another 3 or 4 days to get this done. So I just need to make everybody aware of that. Get ahead of it before the project manager even asks you. Your last situation is the situation where the project manager comes and says, why are you late? Before that, you've already done your planning. Before that, you've already raised the flag. And so hopefully you can actually avoid that question from even coming at you. That's the approach that I would suggest when you're in the middle of a project. Right,
cool. I don't have anything to add to those responses. So I have a question. Someone said specifically to ask you, Emal. I'm just getting into business analysis. What are the top 3 tools I should learn, and what are the top 3 skills to, I guess this means to develop, to be able to succeed as a business analyst?
I love this question because I've written a few articles and I've produced a few YouTube videos answering this question. So I'm well rehearsed in the answer. So I would say is that the first thing you should be asking yourself about your BA career is what type of a business analyst you want to be, because you have a couple of choices. For the majority of business analysts, I would say that the first thing you should focus on is learning the ability to produce good business requirements and good functional specifications. Though that is, in my mind, is the defining characteristic of an analyst. If you don't have those skills, it's very difficult for you to sell yourself as an analyst. So if you haven't mastered business requirements and functional specifications, that's your first priority. If you're a business systems analyst and you work in an environment where there's a lot of custom built applications, a lot of custom built software, you have to make sure you learn SQL or SQL inside out, because that's probably the most commonly requested skill. If you look at job postings for business systems analysts, they will always ask you for SQL. Because what SQL lets you do is it lets you basically just tap into a database without having to go through the application. So you work directly with the data. If you want to be more on the process or more on the business side of things, then you have to learn, the top skill there is you have to learn how to do process design. So learn how to do mapping of business processes and learn how to help the business figure out how they should actually be structured, getting into more of a business architecture role if you want to get a little bit more senior. So the first question really, if I was to boil it down, decide what kind of analyst you want to be. Based on that, choose your skill sets.
Right, cool. Then I have this question from VJ. VJ says, in my organization, we have a Kanban board, but we use Scrum practices. And he says, is it a good approach to combine Kanban and Scrum? Second question is, he's having challenges with team committing to sprint goals during sprint planning. The third one is, how do you get, which is like, so he's saying, how do you get the team to commit during sprint planning, and what are the while we're working on Scrum and the dependent teams are not following Scrum, which often delays our delivery. How do you handle that? Yeah, so it's to everyone, so I'm sure you can see that. He wants to know if Scrum and Kanban combination is a good approach, how to get the team to commit, and dependencies.
Emal, do you want to do the same rounds? Start with me.
Yeah, go ahead. I think you're probably the agile expert expert. So.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's decompose this question, right? We're using Kanban, but following Scrum ceremonies. Well, and is it a good approach? Well, does it work for you? Like, are you achieving the results you want by using this approach? That's up to your organization and your team to decide. Now, if you're using Kanban, Kanban has, if the practice itself, the framework has very strict rules, right? If you're using Kanban because you feel like it gives you flexibility of no deadlines or a flow that just continues all the way, and then using Scrum ceremonies to say we're following Scrum, well, those are all the wrong reasons, right? For using either of those. I would say it's good to do one of them well before you start combining things, because when you're trying to follow both of them, you most likely are following them halfway through, so you're not really getting the benefits of either one of them. So that's kind of on the Kanban and Scrum.
I can take on the commitment issues.
Go ahead.
Okay.
So when working with, so just speaking as a team lead, when I've had other analysts that are on my team on larger projects, I always run into the issue of people wanting to commit or not wanting to commit to certain timelines or certain deliverables. There's a couple of different approaches that you can take to this, and it really all depends on company culture, external pressures, delivery pressures. So there's a lot involved. What I would say, so the approach that has traditionally worked for me is that instead of asking for people to commit, I kind of take a project manager's approach to this to say, hey, look, you have X amount of time to produce Y. Please make sure that it gets done. And what you do in that situation is that you wait to see whether there's any major resistance. If a person says, well, that sounds reasonable, and they don't give you any resistance, then I think you're good. If a person speaks up and says, hey, look, for reasons X, Y, and Z, I need more time, then it becomes a bit of a negotiation for you to figure out how to get to that. But if you just put down a line in the sand and say, look, here is what I expect, then at least what you've done there is you've kind of created a situation where a person they understand what the expectation is of them. And then at that point, you're not really giving them an option on to commit or not. You're just saying that this is the expectation. What you do in tandem with that, though, is that you don't, what works for me is that you don't take a very authoritarian approach to this. You say that here's my expectation based on my experience, here's how long I think it should take. The table's open for discussion, basically. If that's not, then we need to talk. And if you take that type of approach to doing the planning for your sprint planning, a lot of times when I have a team of people, I take that approach when I'm planning out all of the analysis work across the entire scope of the project. I find that people will engage in dialogue to say, look, hey, what you've given me is huge. It's going to take me this long because these people are these people are very difficult to work with, or these people are away on vacation, and it becomes a conversation. So I would say that it's a combination of putting your line in the sand and then making sure that your team members trust you enough to be able to come to you and have an honest conversation about why they can or can't deliver to that. If you take that approach, I think you'll get to the right place.
Okay. Have you got anything to add to that, Daria?
Yeah, to add to that, I think I can actually see why they don't want to commit in the in the last point in this question. But to add to this commitment, those are good strategies, right? How you can help them commit. But as a Scrum Master, or even a team lead working with the team, you should also understand why, right? Commitment is one of 5 values in Scrum, right? It's very important to get the most out of it. And if they don't want to commit, well, they're professionals, grown-up people, they have a reason for not doing that. Try to understand what it is and try to help solve it, right? And looking at the last point where it says, while we are working on Scrum ban, the dependents are not following Scrum, which often delays our delivery. Well, of course they don't want to commit because they know that there is a dependency, right? So that's logical. Why would I commit if I cannot really control the risk? It's out of my hands. So that might be one of the reasons. There might be other reasons, right? I don't know what the situation is, but just looking at that, that might be the reason. So working to figure out how you can mitigate the risks for the team to commit and help them really start feeling more confident, right, about their delivery. So I guess also to follow up on the last question, right? How do you work with the teams who are not following Scrum, which often delays the delivery? I always come back to building relationships, right? Working with other teams, other departments, not everyone will be following Scrum, not everyone will be using the same approaches, not everyone will be as organized as your team may be, right? So just figuring out how you can work together, because you are working on the same products in the same organization towards the same goals. So how can you work together with these people? How can your team help them be more efficient, you know, more effective in their deliveries?
Yep.
So.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. So Sheon sent in this question. Sheon says, what are some agile failure patterns that you've witnessed or noticed? And if you're part of any, what role did you play in addressing those anti-patterns, I guess I would call them?
Bola, you didn't answer any questions. Do you want to
now,
take this?
now I have the two of you. I'm like, I just read them out. Yeah, the two of you, you're probably are going to say everything that I'm going to say. Yeah, so.
I mean, I can speak to it a little bit. The biggest failure that I see, just from my own experience in Agile, doesn't really have to do with the methodology itself. It has to do with a misunderstanding of what Agile is actually meant to do. So the biggest, and this isn't a misunderstanding of the professionals doing the work. A lot of times this is a misunderstanding that the employer has about what they can get out of Agile. That's my, the biggest challenge that I see with Agile is that, because a lot of times when a company tries to shift from a traditional waterfall method into an Agile methodology, they have a lot of expectations out of Agile that Agile wasn't designed for. So the biggest one being is that their expectation is that they can get more work done in a shorter period of time, just because it's just because the way Agile is named, it implies that you're going to be able to do more in less time, which isn't the purpose of Agile. The purpose of Agile has always been to make sure that you can get something out to your clients without having to wait the entire length of the project to build everything and implement it in a big bang approach. Agile has always been a methodology that's allowed you to release something very quickly to a customer and then continue to build on it. What a lot of employers try to do is that they say, well, we have a scope this big that we need to deliver. Traditionally, it would take us this much time to do it, but because we're Agile, we now have this much time to do it. And that right as soon as they've set themselves up with that expectation, they've already set up the project for failure, because Agile just isn't meant to do that. It's just meant to get something out. A lot of times it's very well suited to products where the customer might not necessarily know exactly what they need. So what you do is you deliver them a little bit and you say, okay, use this and then tell me what else you need on top of this. And so you have uncertain scope. You don't know exactly what the solution should be. So that's my biggest, that's how I see.
Well, I can throw in one or two other points. I think one of the failures, usually from my experience, has actually come from people not really understanding the pain point that they're trying to solve from the organization. I do some transformation, and organizations just say, oh, that's the next big thing that everybody is doing, so we want to, in quote, do Agile, we want to start doing Agile. And they get some consultants that go into the organization and focus more on the practice. But at the end of, say, 1 year or 6 months or even 2 years, the organization is saying, hey, there are these problems that we're expecting Agile to help to address, but we still have those problems. So I think one of the anti-patterns or one of the reasons for failure will be not really understanding the pain points that Agile wants to solve. Also, secondly, focusing more on the practice as against the principles and the values. I give you an example. I worked with a company, and they brought in some guys to come support the transformation. And the first thing that those guys did was to convert all the project managers to Scrum Masters without really understanding the personality of those people. The second thing that they did was to say, okay, you know what, we're going to do Scrum, and then Scrum it is, without looking at the structure of the organization.
Yeah.
Then they still also created several layers within the organization. And those things stifled the benefits or the value that any organization should derive from adopting and practicing and being agile. How do you solve that? Awareness, education, constant coaching, learning, relearning. Yeah, so those are some of the things that you can use to address that. Any other thing that you want to throw in?
Well, I mean, you covered a lot of it, right?
Right.
But just to kind of say, as an agile failure pattern specifically, whenever you see someone saying, well, this is just how things work here, or kind of always going back to the old ways of doing things or working and never questioning processes or communication patterns, whatever that is, this is one of the failure pattern that usually is very dangerous, especially if it comes from leadership level, right? And if you see that, you know that it will be very difficult for this organization to change to agile, because they're too attached to their old ways of working, right? And they don't want to question it, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's cool. One last point that I will add is getting buy-in at all level of the organization.
Yeah.
Buy-in, the
Yeah.
adoption, the transformation, the journey should not be top down. Should not be, yeah, the management wants this, and then we come in as coaches or consultants or trainers, and then we start. Try to get an understanding of, or try to work with everybody within the organization to understand their pain points and see how they believe that the adoption of the new mindset, the new methodology will help them. If you don't work on that and you just implement whatever it is that you're implementing, you will see a lot of resistance, you will see a lot of issues and all. So first, get a pain point, make sure that you get 360 buy-in from people and all. All right, so good, let's move on. There's another question. What is the role of a business analyst in an agile project or in an agile environment that already has a scrum master and a product owner? Yeah, I can leave that to you again.
So I can give you my take on it, which is probably, okay, so let's start right at the top. Most organizations who claim to be running Agile are not running Agile. And so, and many organizations out there are not actually well suited to run in an Agile environment, okay? So in an Agile environment, let's say, so I've worked in one truly Agile environment where the business analyst, well, basically what, between the product owner and the Scrum Master and the team captains, which was the development lead, they basically had all of the domain knowledge that they needed to be able to design the solution out. Okay, in most organizations, they run a very hybrid agile methodology where they still need a full business analyst role, and the role of that business analyst does not actually change from the role of a business analyst on a waterfall project. Typically, the only thing that's really different is in how the business analyst does their work. So instead of producing all of the requirements and specifications right up front, what the business analyst is now forced to do is to slice up their work in terms of what the MVP is and what the release plan for the project is, and to continue to do the business requirements and functional specifications for each of those different releases. So in short, the job of a business analyst, what a business analyst actually produces, doesn't change a whole lot. It's just in how they divide up their work and how they interact with the team, with how they basically fit in with the flow of an agile project, if that answers the question.
Right, cool. So I think one thing I can add is, because the framework, particularly for Scrum, leaves no room for job titles other than the three popular ones that we have. So while you're working with an agile team, you may not be a business analyst, or you may not have the title business analyst, but the function of business analysis is still being practiced. Also, the approach is sort of different compared to when you are a business analyst in a traditional waterfall. Anything at all that you need to do, it can be from supporting the product owner, it can be from helping the development team for clarification. You may even, as a business analyst, get one or two other skills or skill set needed to deliver the product. So while we don't have the role business analyst, the function of business analysis is still very, very relevant, very useful within within an agile team or a Scrum team in particular.
The work still has to get done.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. So as against creating your deliverables will change. Basically, you might be supporting the product owner in creating the product vision. You might be helping the product owner in user stories. You may be helping to clarify stories with the team, and all of those things.
To summarize, I can say that if you're working with a Scrum team and your title is business analyst, you're just a development team member.
Yeah.
You're part of the team. So you're there to help the team to deliver products. That's it.
Right, cool. How do you get teams' goals to align with the organization's goals?
Start from the top.
Absolutely. So I did a lot of strategy. Usually what happens is there's a strategy at the corporate level, and then it's then cascaded to every business unit, every function, and even to products.
Mm-hmm.
So if an organization's goal is set, the goal of every product or project must align with, just like the same way you have for business analyst, just like the same way you have the business requirements, you have the stakeholder requirements, you have the solution requirements. Solution requirements are requirements that must be met to help the stakeholders to achieve their own requirements. And then the stakeholder requirements, when completed, will help the business requirement to be addressed. So start from the top. Make sure that there is an alignment with what the team is doing. If there's anything that doesn't align with, that the team is working on, that doesn't align with the organization, then it may be sheer waste of time. But always confirm how the goal of the team will help the organization to achieve their target or their goal. Start from the top.
Yeah.
And bear in mind that making sure, especially in large organizations, it's a huge responsibility to take on yourself to align the team. That has to be something that's that is a goal that's shared by you, but also your manager, your director, your VP, and everybody else involved there. Because if strategy is being dictated top down, which it usually is, that has to make sure that it ripples down the organization before it gets to you, that everybody else has fulfilled their duty to make sure that they're in line with strategy so that you can do your part. And as part of doing your part, essentially, the one biggest suggestion I would give is that you have to always really clearly understand what your manager or your director's goal is, and be in constant touch with them to make sure that what you're doing is in line with what they're requesting. So if you're the type of person who's given a lot of autonomy in your work, essentially what you have to do is you have to do what you think is going to help your manager or director achieve their goal. And then check in with them anytime you have any questions to say, look, I'm planning on doing this. I just want to make sure that this is still in line with what your objectives are. And ask it direct in those specific words, very directly. Say, is what I'm about to do in line with your objectives? And if not, can you help me get back in line? And if you just stay in touch with your own leadership within your organization, then you've already done your part.
Right. Sounds good. So Vijay is a Scrum Master now for 2 teams. He's dreaming to become an Agile coach, and he wants to know if PSM3 is achievable.
Yeah.
I can answer that. Yes, it is. Daria did it. So, and what are some of the alternative or equivalent certifications for Agile coaching, I do believe?
Yeah. So that's a difficult one to unpack, but I'll try to kind of make it short. I will share an article in the chat a little bit later once I answer. That's an interesting one to read on this topic. So if you want to become an Agile coach, I will tell you that as a Scrum Master, congratulations, you're already an Agile coach. Now, the question is, what does it mean for you to become an Agile coach? Is it you want to work more with executives, for example, on the executive level? As a Scrum Master, you definitely should start working on that right now. You do need to start working and coaching the executives as well. As a Scrum Master, I remember at first I was kind of very hesitant to do that. I felt that I would only need to work with the team, but you are there to also help the organization in their Agile transformation. So you should start approaching the management and the executives of any level, whether it's a director, just a team manager, or an SVP. And that's definitely something that I was doing when I was working at Scotiabank as a Scrum Master for one team. I started working with the executives, right? I started working with the VPs and SVPs, and that's where I was getting the experience. Right now, I'm working with C-level executives in a small company, right? So there are no limits in that. And this is the experience you'll need if you want to kind of officially transfer from Scrum Master title to Agile Coach title, because you need the experience, right? Yeah. The certification, PSM3, achievable, yes. It's a Scrum Master certification. And if you get to a PSM3 level, you will see that the one part of the Scrum Master role is the coaching role, right? Yeah. Looking at the numbers in terms of achievability is what PSM1 has 300,000 people who have PSM1. Yes. There are 40,000 people who have PSM2 and about 700 of us who have PSM3.
Oh, okay.
So it is achievable. Mostly trainers go for PSM3 certification, but it is totally doable. I did it. I did it 95% because I had to become a trainer. Yeah. Equivalent certifications, there's, I think, what is the
ICP, ACC?
Yeah, the coaching specific coaching
Yeah.
certifications, you know?
Yeah, I can put that in
Yeah,
the
go.
chat.
Yeah.
Okay.
But as a Scrum Master, it depends what you want to do. I love Scrum Master role, right? You can see on my profile it says Agile Coach, but I love to be Scrum Master because I can not only work on the team level, I also work on the executive level. I work all across the organization, right? So.
Thank you.
All right, cool stuff. So Sheon said, how much capacity would you consider to refactoring, fix bugging, or spikes, exploring new technologies or ideas?
So refactoring, how much would you, so how much time would you budget, I'm assuming is the question?
Yes, how much
That,
of team's capacity, yes.
yeah, I would say that it changes on a team-to-team basis. So the one question you want to ask yourself is, how good is your team? Because the amount of defects and the amount of refactoring that you have to do all depends on a number of different factors. Number one, did the analysts do a solid enough analysis job? If they haven't, you're going to experience problems. Next question is your team captain, your development team, are they solid developers, or are they a little bit sloppy, and are they, likely to let things slip through the cracks? If that's the case, and you know that that's the case, then you have to factor in more time than less time. So there isn't, I wouldn't say that there's a formula. I think for something like that, you have to intimately know the team that you're working with. If you have a team of all-stars, you do very little. You budget very little time and effort for refactoring or rework. If you have a team, if you have an average team, you take a different approach. And if you have a team that is a little bit lower on the delivery scale, then you have to factor in more time for all of that.
Cool. Do you have anything to add, Daria?
Sorry, I'm unmuting myself. No, I think that's pretty much covers it, right? It all depends on the team, and on the amount of tech that you have as well, right? So.
Okay. Cool. So someone sent this privately to me saying, my question for Daria, Emal, is there a learning structure to complete the ECBA certification? The person already did some courses in U.F.T. and also in lean management.
I'm not qualified to answer that question because I don't know the ECBA very well.
Right.
I'm not certified. I'm not a certified business analyst. I haven't invested any time in the ECBA or the CBAP. So I wouldn't be able to answer that question for you. I think that there are plenty of other trainers and a lot of coaches out there that would be able to answer that for you.
Okay, so I can respond to that question. So IIBA needs you to have just 21 hours, right? So, and if you've done some courses in U of T and also lean management, I want to believe that you can use that for the ECBA, which is entry certificate in business analysis. But you can reach out to me if you need that. Anyways, all right. What are the first steps to take to switch to a BA career? I'm not sure if you didn't cover this, but yeah, I'll give you some time to take that also.
To switch to a BA, oh, do we have another sound? Oh, can we mute? I think there's one other person who's not muted yet.
Sorry guys, if you are not talking, can you go on mute? Okay, who will that be? Okay, all right. Yeah, the person just went on mute.
I think we're good.
All right.
So
First steps
the
to
question
take.
was how to switch to a business analyst career. Was that the?
Yes.
That was the question. So depending on where you're at, I would say that I actually have a really good video on this that I'll share in a second. But basically, most people get into an analyst role from a subject matter expert role. So most business analysts that I see are people who are working in some area of business. They understand that area of business very well, and then they learn some analysis skills to land a business analyst role in the same area. The latest example of a person that I worked with an analyst just a few months ago, she was an HRIS business analyst. And the way she became an HRIS business analyst was that she was an HR person who had been working in HR for quite some time in the organization. She learned some business analyst skills, applied for an analyst job within that same organization, and that's how she did it. And that's how the majority of analysts get their jobs, is that they basically take the area of business that they're in. That's one of the great things about analysis is that there are analysts in almost every business domain. So in accounting, payroll processing, HR, anything you can think of, any area of business that needs improvement always has an analyst to it. So if you're like a payroll processor or if you're an accounts payable person, it's very, you take all of that knowledge that you have, learn some analysis skills, and then try to apply for junior analyst or intermediate analyst roles.
Okay, cool. So Neha said, is there any prerequisite in terms of having experience before starting as a BA? She's got 2.5 years of experience as SDE in the past. She's looking for a job as a BA. What should she learn first, and what should be her approach? Yeah, I'm not sure if you didn't respond to that, but if you can take like 1 or 2 minutes to recap on that, would be cool.
Sure. I don't know what an SDE is, but I'll assume that it's you're a specialist in some business area. And so what I just said really applies. I would, so again, if you have experience in your area of business, what you should be doing right now then is really just focusing on sure that you're getting some knowledge and understanding of what analysts do and trying to pick up the skills. The second thing that you should be doing is that you should be looking for job postings that you don't necessarily intend to apply for right now, but the type of job postings that you want to aim for. So in your area of business, just do a simple search on LinkedIn or on any job site that you want for a junior analyst role in your area of business. Read the requirements for what that job role is, and then reverse engineer that job posting to figure out what you need to get into that role. And so that is probably the most effective way. That is the shortest period of time that you can get yourself into that role into that type of a role, is just look at the job posting and reverse engineer it into your training plan, and then that's how you're going to get in.
Right. Cool. So I have this other question from someone. How do you advise teams who translate story points to development hours? What's the best practice using story points?
Well, look at the story points themselves. It's why are we using them, right? We're trying to plan ahead, right? We're trying to calculate velocity for the team so that they can, based on that velocity, which is historical data, try to see how much work they most likely will accomplish in the future sprints, right? Story points themselves are made up numbers, right? They don't mean anything. I guess the best practice of using story points is for the team to use it in order to plan. That's the kind of the best practice, because it shouldn't be used by the management teams. It shouldn't be used to create detailed project plans or roadmaps, whatever that is, right? It can be used to create forecasts and to update those forecasts every single sprint, because we'll know more, right? Yeah, I don't know if you want to add something.
I would say that estimating in general is way more art than science. And so when you're estimating the work, whether you're doing it in an agile setting or in a waterfall setting, you have to basically, so the approach that most projects take is called progressive elaboration. And basically what that means is that based on what we know, we're going to estimate X. When we get a little bit closer, we're going to adjust our estimates. As long as your project manager or your scrum master or your team captain, whoever's leading the project, takes that approach, I think you're safe. There's no formula. There's no formula that will say, hey, plug in these numbers and here's your estimate. That's just not the way it works. You have to have a good sense of how big the scope is, how effective the team is, and then what you do is you give a certain estimate based on that. Even for my work, I've been doing this for, like I said, for over 15 years. my estimates, I would say, are probably about 60 or 70% accurate at best. And what I do is when I do my estimates right up front, I give it with a wide, I say, here's my estimate. I have 50% confidence in this estimate right now. In 3 to 4 weeks, I'm going to have maybe 60% confidence in this estimate, depending on how it goes. So there's no formula. You just have to learn based on what the expectation is and what your reality is. You have to find some way to negotiate that with whoever needs to know what those numbers are.
Right.
It's not an easy answer. So I know that many people in this area look for a very easy answer for estimating. And I'll tell you that it is, like I said, I've been doing this for 15 years. If I'm hitting 60, 70% rates on my estimates, you can't expect yourself as a beginner to be getting that stuff right up front.
Yeah, I mean, one
70%.
thing to understand is an estimate is an estimate. It doesn't necessarily mean commitment. Secondly, really, story points. I have a team who doesn't even do story pointing.
Yeah.
What problem do you want to address by using story pointing? Do you want to get some predictability, or do you want to track the team's productivity and know when to take it? Just be careful about story point estimation because it can be hacked big time. It can be hacked big time. We will look really good with our velocity chart, but we're not really delivering as much business value as those numbers represent, right? Okay, I know that you have to go right now, Daria.
Yeah, unfortunately.
So I will give you 1-2 minutes if you can, just to say hi, bye, and if you have something you want to share, it will be really cool.
Sure. Yes, well, I just wanted to thank you for organizing this. I think that was a great session, some great questions, and I hope that it's helpful for the participants. I'm really happy to be here and to share some of the insights that I have from my work. So thank you. Thank you for great questions.
I was going to say, where can people find you if they want to?
Absolutely.
Yes. So you can find me on ScrumMastered.com, where I do provide right now. I'm converting all of my training into virtual training. I'm thinking of creating new online classes. I also have a wealth of material that is free for downloads. So it's right there, ScrumMaster.com. Downloads, articles, videos, everything that you can think of about the Scrum Master role and how you can help your company to do agile transformations. And one of the new additions is the free webinar that I will be running next Friday. I only have a few spots left. It's about retrospectives, and it will be a collaborative session, so that's why I have a limited attendance. So if you want to learn more about how you can create productive discussions around retrospectives, even when we are all working remotely, I do encourage you to subscribe. And that's pretty much it for me.
Cool. I'm sure if they have any other question, they can always reach out to you on scrummastered.com or connect with you on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes. Thank you so much for organizing.
You're welcome. No troubles at all. So we will, Emal, do you still have about 15 more minutes to stay around?
Sure.
Okay.
I can stick around for a while.
Okay. Thank you so much. Always. So I have this question from someone sent this privately to me. He said, Emal, this is specifically for you. What is the difference between the business analyst and the business systems analyst? I hope that's what you meant.
Yep. The biggest difference is in the type of work that you're going to be doing, most likely when you get into an organization. Now, keep in mind that many companies will use the terms interchangeably, so it doesn't guarantee you anything. But generally speaking, a business analyst focuses very heavily on doing requirements and specifications, and they don't always have a lot of deep technical skills. A systems analyst typically works way more with systems than they do with the business side of things. And so the systems analyst a lot of times will be basically just one step away from a developer or a technical person who does configuration. Systems analyst has very deep knowledge of exactly how the systems work, and they are oftentimes they'll be former developers who are moved into an analyst role. Business analysts, let's say generalist business analysts, typically have they don't have as much of the technical skills. They might not necessarily have as much of the systems knowledge. What they do is their job is way more oriented at making sure that they understand the needs of the business and that they're able to translate those needs into requirements and specifications so that the technical team understands what it is that they have to deliver. Generally speaking, that's what the difference is. And I would add on top of that that you also have process analysts that are even farther away from the systems world. And what they do is they usually actually report into the business side of things rather than reporting into IT. They're way more on the business side. They might not necessarily even have as much of the analysis skills that a business analyst would have. They help the business figure out how they should be functioning, and then they'll work with an analyst, a business analyst or a systems analyst to do the systems part of it.
Right. Cool question. So Neha wants to know if a software developer can become a business analyst.
Oh, absolutely. So I would say that that's another huge area. So those are really the two major avenues. I think we've covered them both in this session. Is that one set of business analysts will typically come from subject matter expertise, and they tend to be the business process or the business analyst. Many developers who become business analysts usually become business systems analysts. So there's a lot of that's a very, very common route for many developers to take. I myself, I mean, I started off my career doing development, and I just didn't like software development as much as I liked analysis work. So the very first project that I had, I was in charge of coding some interfaces between two systems, and I worked on that for, I would say, maybe 3 months. I went to my director and I said, look, I love doing programming in university. I don't like it so much in the real world. Are there any analyst roles that I could move into? And they said, absolutely. And so that's how it worked out for me.
Okay, cool. So there's this other question from someone who says, how do you approach daily stand-ups with distributed teams? So I'll let you, I know you've worked with a lot of clients and most of the teams that you work with are geographically dispersed. I'd like you to take a shot at that, and then I can provide one or two input or insights also.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a team lead who wants to run a tight ship, you just have to make sure that you have good tools, first of all. So Zoom, for example, is excellent for running these types of sessions. But essentially, the tips that you have is that you just make sure that everybody is disciplined enough that they show up on time and they understand what the rules of the game are for daily stand-ups. And the rules of the game being very simple. What did you accomplish? What are you going to accomplish? What did you accomplish yesterday? What are you going to accomplish today? Do you have any blockers? Answer those questions. Any elaboration on that? It's not a time for Q&A for the team to start figuring out solutions to problems. You have to make sure that you enforce a rule to say, all right, please take that offline. Let's move to the next person. And so I would say good tools and just some strict discipline to make sure that everybody has their say so you can break and actually start doing the work.
Right. Okay, sounds good. In my experience, I remember when I worked with Bell, we had like a distributed team, and we wanted to ensure that we don't, for the daily scrum, we didn't go beyond the 15 minutes. So I always let the team know that, hey, there's something called the parking lot where we can discuss things outside of those 3 typical questions. And also just so that we don't have one person going into too much detail, I add a tool, like a countdown tool, that once someone starts, it starts counting down from 65 seconds. So it's clear, you see it. When you're on 15 seconds, you know you have just 15 seconds to to provide your update. It's not status, it's update, right? And the best, well, one of the most effective approaches to just answer those three questions, like what have you accomplished towards the sprint goal in the last 24 hours? What's your target in the next 24 hours toward the sprint goal? Is there any impediment? Just name it, not discuss it, right? That's that. Leveraging tools. We use the number of tools, Zoom, WebEx, Team, and all of that. And then that's that time, that countdown.
Excellent.
Oh, another personal question. What's the difference between a data analyst and a business analyst?
Two completely different jobs, I would say. So as a business analyst, you might have to do some data analysis, is the way I would describe it. But basically, data analysts are more in the world of data science, and business analysts are more in the world of doing organizational change. So basically, the role of an analyst is to, just broadly speaking, help an organization figure out what they have to do to create some sort of a change within themselves. So we work with the business to understand their needs. You work with the IT to make sure that they're building out the right product to satisfy that business need. That's a business analyst. The job of a data analyst, depending on the organization, is basically to look at data. They may be expected to be the person who produces reports. They may be the person who is expected to apply some data science to arrive at some conclusions about what the data says. And essentially, so basically, they're more of a person who looks at a data set and they do something with it. An analyst is a totally different role. As part of being an analyst, you might have to do some data analysis. So as part of your project, you might be expected to look at the data and say, hey, can we produce certain reports as part of this product that we're building? That's your data analysis component. But a data analyst typically doesn't do the other things that a business analyst does. They don't go and help the company design out business processes. They don't go and produce business requirements and functional specifications. So they're two completely different roles, even though they sound very similar.
Okay, I got this question. How can the role of a business analyst be connected to cybersecurity analyst? Is there a link? So someone sent me that question just now.
I would say that
Business
there's a
analyst.
very faint link. Yeah, I would say there's a faint link. So if you're in charge of designing certain applications, you always have to keep security in mind. And so the more knowledge that you have about how security works, the better. But that role is generally a totally distinct role. I think there's a very, very faint link. So if you're trying to kind of build some sort of overlap of skills, I would say that's probably not the best match. If you want to be a security expert, to be a really good security expert, that's a dedicated role. And so if you're an analyst who designs applications, it might be worthwhile to learn a little bit about how security works. But in many organizations, that is also not the analyst's job. It's typically the system architect's job to worry about security, or the developer's job to worry about security.
Okay, so so there's this question that's coming like 3 times now, or maybe we've discussed it 3 times. It's about the value, the importance of certification to actually either getting the job or succeeding in the job. So this is saying I'm an aspiring business analyst. Will the ECBA certification help me? Is there any other certification? I know you spoke about this. You made like a few videos, but do you want to also share here? And
Yeah, sure. So will it help? I mean, absolutely. Any amount of studying you can do will help. It's a matter of how much will it help, and is your investment into an ECBA worth the payoff? That's the question I'll answer. So generally speaking, the purpose of a certification is to help you prove to the employer that you have a certain amount of base knowledge. The purpose of a certification is not to teach you how to do the job. And so you have to always bear that in mind, is that when you're getting certified, if you're completely new, and you want to just get acquainted with the profession, the ECBA may be a good option for you. Where I would suggest people do certifications is if they are in an environment where, let's say, for example, in certain banks, certifications may tend to hold some weight. So if somebody sees that an analyst has CBAP or ECBA, they might do a little bit better in the interview process or in the application process. But you'll notice that me having said all this, I don't have any of these certifications, right? What do I have certifications in though? I've gotten my certification in what's called the Canadian Securities course. And the reason why I got that is because I wanted to work in the investment industry, and for you to get basic knowledge about how those investment products work, how does a mutual fund work, how does how do derivatives work, how does an options contract work. I needed the domain knowledge to understand how the investment industry works. And so instead of investing my time into the ECBA or the CBAP, I went and got the finance certification that helped me get into the role that I wanted to get into, right? So when you're thinking about certifications, think about it just in terms of what it is you're trying to get into it. If you want to learn knowledge, I would say just choose the domain that you want to get certified in and get that certification. If you want to prove to employers that you have a base amount of knowledge, then I would say that the ECBA or the CBAP might be a good option for you to pursue. I wouldn't blindly go into it without doing a little bit of research first though, because the amount of work, especially if you're trying to get the CBAP or if you're trying to get the PMI certification, the amount of time and effort that's required to get those certifications is very high. So you have to be, you have to make sure that you're, if you're investing your time and efforts in the best place possible, you should do a little bit of research before you make that judgment call. But don't expect certifications to teach you how to do the work. They will not do that for you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So I have two questions here. So someone says, I have a bachelor's degree in business management with tourism management, and I've experience in the field. I'm looking now to get into business analysis. My experience is international, and I've not had any success getting into the hospitality role for close to 2 years. So I've been reading about business analysis. What should I be doing? Where should I start?
Well, you know what? I'll tell you. We've decided to make the best place for you to go right now, and I don't say this to my benefit, I say this for your benefit, is to head over to bablocks.com and sign up for the BA Fundamentals course. I've made it completely free for everybody for right now. So just to try to encourage everyone to stay indoors and to self-isolate, I've made the course completely free. The original plan was to actually launch that course at the end of this month, and it was planned to be a paid course. But if you head over there right now, you can join our community, take that course for free, and just understand the profession of business analysis. The first block of modules in that course will explain to you exactly what it is that a business analyst does. It'll explain to you exactly what types of activities they perform, the types of deliverables that are expected to produce. And like I said, you have nothing to lose. It's completely free. And so you can sign in there. Thank you, Bola, for showing this. Bola will show you a short, quick little demo of what the course is. But what you want to do is you want to make sure that you're understanding what the profession is. You want to make sure that you're understanding what it is that a business analyst is typically expected to do. And then again, the thing that you should be working on is finding, if you can find some job postings for the types of roles you want to do, look at the skills and then figure out how you're going to be able to get those skills. That will help you the most. And thank you for sharing this. So this is what Bola's sharing with you right now is inside of our community. Essentially what we have is we have a lot of materials posted there. Bola, maybe you can just click on the education section there and just show them the course that they're able to get free access to, and go to the BA Fundamentals area here. So this is basically our full business analysis fundamentals course, and this course will explain to you from beginning to end exactly what a business analyst does, where they fit in the organization, and it's probably your best bet especially if you're locked indoors right now and you're online. I would say just take the course while it's still free.
Right.
Thank you.
And I like to say this, and I'm not saying this because you're here. I've taken a lot of courses. I do some training. I've done a lot of reading, and I watched the definition of business analysis on this course, and I can say that I've not seen a lot of courses or resources break it down as good as you did here.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that, Bola.
Right.
And if you might have noticed that it's actually our third iteration of that lesson, because I've had to put a lot of thought. So the way that I figured out that course is that I thought way back to 2005, and I said, how would I want this explained to me? And so
Right.
I basically just built all of these lessons, keeping my old self in mind, to say this is the way I would want business analysis explained to me, and that's why I designed it the way that I did. But thank you for the compliment. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. So I'm sending that bablocks.com.
Yeah.
Okay, right.
Yeah. So you can just, for the members that are listening here, you can just go to bablocks.com. There's a button on the side there that says request access. If you
Right.
click on that, it'll ask you a few basic questions. And our community manager is always on standby, and she goes through the questions, and then she lets people into the community. Once you're in there, you can go in and request access to the actual BA Fundamentals course. And then once you get access to that, you can start taking the lessons.
Right, cool. Someone says, what tool are you guys using as a whiteboard right now to facilitate big planning or PI planning?
As a whiteboard, so I do everything in Visio. And so my favorite tool to do planning, to do business analysis work is all in Visio. But there are a lot of other tools out there that will let you draw that on the screen. Zoom, I'm sure, probably has a whiteboard feature.
Right. Right. So there are a couple of tools. There's Zoom, there's Mori, there's Miro, there's PI Plan as a tool, particularly for PI planning and all of those things. There's WebEx. There are a couple of tools that you can use. Some have inbuilt whiteboarding. Some you can share, or you can integrate another whiteboarding tool. So someone says here, can you tell us about a time you had to turn a negative work relationship into a positive one in an agile environment?
A negative one into a positive one? Yeah, I mean, it's, every organization has its challenges, I would say. Whether you're in an agile environment or in a waterfall environment, and by negative relationship, what I would imagine is that you're not really getting along very well with the person that you're working with. So the short answer is yes. There are times where I've succeeded. There are times where I have not succeeded. But really, that all really depends on how willing the counterparty is to work towards a common goal, even though you might not have the best personal relationship with the person. I find that with most professionals that I work with, they're very fully capable of putting together personal differences and working towards a goal. And so that's my attitude towards everybody that I work with. I prefer to work with people who I get along really well with, but the reality of the situation is that that's not always the case. And so in my mind, my only goal, especially when I'm in my client site, is I put everything aside and I say, what is it that I could be doing right now to help the client achieve their goals? And so whether a person, I get along with a person or not, I set all of that stuff aside. You can only be capable of doing something like that if the other person is capable of doing that same thing. And so there's no real magic bullet to it. It's really just on a case-by-case basis, I would say.
Right. So I also add this, if the stakeholder or if the colleague is very strategic to whatever it is that you're doing, there's a concept called emotional bank account, which everybody has. What you want to do is try and understand this person's personality. What are the things that they like? What are their interests? And then you can start making some deposits into that emotional bank account. And if you do that for 1, 2, 3 weeks, the person will, all things being equal, the person will sort of start getting to warm up to you, will start trusting you, and then once you can establish some trust, and I believe that whatever negative view the person has about you can move to being positive. But the best is just to be super official to the right thing, right? It's all about people, it's all about the work.
Yeah, keep it professional and just do the best that you can with what it is that you have to do.
Okay, right. We're running out of time. So someone said, thank you, Bola and Emal, for all. What are some agile that you have witnessed? What role did you play in addressing them? I'm not sure if I think we spoke about this already, the agile failure patterns when, well, people focusing more on the practice, but not actually the objective of the practices, and then the values. People focusing more on the ceremonies, but not on the cultural change, the mindset change, right? Those are some of the things that I can think about. And what you will have to do is to continue to create awareness, to continue to coach them, to continue to train them on that. Okay, we have just 3 more minutes. Is there any other thing that you want to share with the people that we have, Mal?
No, I mean, just head over to, I would say that if you're trying to become a business analyst, and especially right now, if you're locked in, if I can encourage you to stay indoors, go take our course. We've made it, like I said, completely free. It's eventually gonna become a paid course the way that it was originally intended to do. But if you can just kind of bunker down for a little while and keep yourself safe, if you need something to do, head over to bablocks.com and sign up for the course, and hopefully I'll see you inside there.
All right, so that will be all. Thank you so very much, Emal, for jumping in as usual. Thank you everyone for attending. Thank you for all your questions. I hope that you've got 1 or 2 values from this session. I'll confirm with Emal and Daria if I can share the recordings with everyone, and if they say yes, I will send that in an email. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
It's been an interesting 90 minutes. Enjoy the rest of your evening and your weekend. Stay safe, stay home, and develop yourself using that opportunity. Thanks and bye for now.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.